In the previous lesson, Haleemah and ET explored a cobblestone context and worked together to make sense of how a student, Amir, was seeing the relationship between the size number and the total number of gray stones. Haleemah and ET said that Amir was seeing a relationship between the size number and the number of stones in one column. This is where the first 3 in their expression came from. The second 3 also matched the size number, but represented the number of groups or columns of those stones. This was the same meaning for all 3 sections. Finally, to account for the misfit column, Amir had to add one more column. So he added another 3 for the number of stones in that column. Eventually, Haleemah and ET were able to generalize using algebra Amir's method for finding the total number of stones in a cobblestone pattern using just the size number. In this lesson, Haleemah and ET will explore how a different student, Nicole, saw the cobblestone pattern. This time, Haleemah and ET will be starting with Nicole's algebraic equation and will work to see her method in the cobblestones. The goal of this lesson will be to apply Nicole's method, compare it with Amir's method, and explore equality. In this episode, Haleemah and ET will start to work with Nicole's method by exploring her equation and trying to think about how she may have been seeing the pattern with a size 3 cobblestone.
Circle and label the size 3 or size 9 drawings to show how Nicole is thinking about the gray stones.
Well, the first thing I notice is that 3 squared, which is 3 times 3, is going to represent the 3 columns and 3 rows right here.
So I noticed the 3 times 4 is the column right here of 3 tiles and the row of 4 stones right there.
And I see what happens with the first section happens with the third section with the 3 squared, which is going to be 3 times 3. And that's going to be right here.
So can you guys go ahead and circle the drawings to show, I think you've talked together about how you're seeing it. Can you go ahead and circle what you're seeing and get it labeled? Okay, T, why don't you take us through that first section? What do you think the 3 squared means?
So this 3 squared means the 3 times 3, which is going to, the first 3 is going to represent the 3 tiles in one column. And the second 3 is going to represent 3 tiles in one row.
So what does the multiplication mean, the 3 times 3?
It's going to be the equation that they're going to use to find the total number of tiles in that one section.
So what did the multiplication mean back here for 11 times 11?
11 times 11 what represents the 11 tiles in one column and 11 columns in one section.
Okay. And is it the same here or different?
It's different.
Ah, why is that?
In Amir's equation, we're multiplying the first 3. It's still the same. It's 3 tiles in one column, but the second 3 in Amir's equation is 11 or 3 columns. And in Nicole's method, the second 3 represents 3 tiles in a row.
How do you know that? What are you noticing that you think that?
I noticed that because there is,
I think that you're noticing something important. I just want to understand your idea. And I think Haleemah is noticing the same thing because she has columns and rows. Do you want to say how you're thinking about it, Haleemah?
Yeah, so for 3 times 4, I know I think about it kind of like base times height, where it's
Huh.
3 on the side and 4 on the bottom. So that's how I first saw that.
ET, can you explain your thinking now? Like why you were thinking about columns and rows?
So when I originally saw this drawing, I immediately saw columns and rows.
Yeah.
But when you started questioning what each column and row meant, I now realize that Amir's method of using columns can still be used in Nicole's equation, because the first 3 still is 3 tiles in 1 column, while the second 3 can be used as 3 columns with 3 tiles in them.
So what do you think about that, Haleemah?
Could you just what you meant, ET, is that there are 3 columns in one of the sections that Nicole made, and that you can multiply that by the because there's 3 in all, 3 columns in all.
Yes.
Okay, I understand what you mean.
Haleemah and ET have put in some hard work. First, ET rewrote Nicole's arithmetic expression. He said that 3 to the second is the same thing as 3 times itself 2 times. Thus, it could be written as 3 times 3. Then, they said that the first 3 is the number of stones in a column, which, remember, is the same thing they said for Amir's method. For the second 3, though, Haleemah and ET said that it represented the number of stones in a row. This is slightly different than how they described Amir's method. Recall, for Amir's method, they said that the second number represented the number of columns, nothing to do with the rows. Haleemah and ET are now realizing that this method of seeing one of the 3's as the number of stones in a column, and the other 3 as the number of those columns, fits for both Amir and Nicole's method. To finish exploring this method, Haleemah and ET will attempt to make use of the groups of language to describe the multiplication that they are seeing.
I can also start a new page for you if you prefer.
I think I'm okay. Thank you. Yeah, so do you see the 4 groups? I mean, the 3 groups of 4?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that works the same with my 3 groups, 3 groups of 3, like you did.
Yeah.
And there is also, I'm gonna erase this real quick. There is 3 groups of 3 like this. And either one of them is acceptable.
3 means 3 groups, and then it's 3 groups of 4, because there's 4 in each row.
And ET, how about yours?
I have one that's exactly the same as Haleemah, being the 3 groups of 3, which is going to be 3 rows with 3 tiles inside of them. And I also have 3 columns with 3 tiles inside of them.
Wow, Haleemah and ET have worked up 2 ways of seeing Nicole's method, both using our groups of language to describe multiplication. Following the way they described Amir's method, ET showed in the first section what the 3 times 3 meant in terms of columns. The first 3 represented the number of stones in a column, and the second 3 represented the number of those columns of stones. Changing it up a bit, Haleemah and ET then described the multiplication in terms of rows. Haleemah said that the 4 represented the number of stones in a row of the middle section. Then she said that the 3 was the 3 groups or 3 rows of those stones. ET was able to see something similar for the final section. He said that the first 3 was the number of stones in a row, and the second 3 was the 3 groups or 3 rows of those 3 stones. In the next episode, they will apply Nicole's method to a new cobblestone size, and will explore how one can see Nicole's method using either columns or rows.